Alright, tonight I'm going to show you guys how to change or check the valve clearance on a KTM 690. So what we're going to need is a couple of tools, 1/4 inch socket, 1/4 inch ratchet with extension, 8, 10, and 13 millimeter, a magnet in case we have to take some of the shims out, and a metric feeler gauge, 1 zip tie, and then this is my handy dandy little tool for taking the cover so I can rotate the crank. Okay, first thing you have to do is take your bike apart and take the airbox off. When you're taking the airbox off, you got to make sure you unclip your pressure sensor so you don't pull it out, and then you should be able to remove your airbox. Hopefully, there we go. Okay, you can see the top of my motor is really dirty, so I'm going to spend a long time cleaning, but first I'm going to cover up my intake so I don't get anything in there. Okay, I like to use the clamp and a bag to cover up the intake when you're cleaning it, and you want to make sure you get the dirt from anywhere that could fall in, so make sure you clean your frame pretty well. When you're checking your valves, the motor has to be cold, and so it takes about 2 hours to cool completely the motor. So what I usually like to do is let the motor cool, check my valves, put it back together, run it, warm it up, and then change my oil. Then that way anything that has fallen into the head will be hopefully cleaned out in that after you warm it up to change your oil. Okay, now we can see the inside of the motor for the first time. So you need a 13 millimeter, and you need to get the motor to top dead center, and you just want to line up both marks, and it's right below that bolt. And if you have a headlamp, it's going to be good to shine in there. Right there, top dead center. So okay, so now what you want to do is you want to back off your cam chain tensioner. I have a manual cam chain tensioner from Rally Raid, so I manually pull mine back out, so I have a little bit of slop in the chain. And then what you want to do is you want to take a nice clean zip tie, and you want to run it through one of your holes. And if you zip tie your cam chain to your gear, you can't slip a gear on your timing. Now what we will do is check the valve clearance, and to check the valves you'll take your feeler gauge. It's really handy to have a metric feeler gauge. So the KTM 690 valves have to be between 0.07 and 0.13 millimeter. So if I can do this one-handed with your motor at top dead center, you just want to slide the feeler gauge underneath there. It should have really a lot of play. So that's 0.07. So obviously this one's bigger than 0.07, and you just want to repeat this with all of them. And you just slide your feeler gauge up underneath. That one's 0.17, that one's 0.07, and that one's 0.07. So none of them are tight. Now I have to check if any of them are loose. Okay, with 0.13, 0.07, and 0.06 together, 0.13, I cannot slide it under any of them. So they are all between 0.07 and 0.13. So my valves are good right now, but I like to check and figure out what each one is and write it down and then record it and see if it's moved since the last time I've checked it. My valves are good, but I'm going to take my cam out and show you how you would actually replace the valve shim if you needed to. So I'll do that right now. Now the cam guide holder thing is right here, and it's this little bolt, the same one we were lining up at top dead center, and you want to take this out, and you want to be very careful you don't drop it into the motor. I've done that before. Now that I have the bolt out, you can pull your cam guide out. This is what a magnet comes in really handy for. Okay, this isn't the best view, but you take the cam shaft and you pull it out the side of the motor and just let it dangle. Then what you need to do is you take your trusty magnet and you just put it on top of the valve, and you can pull your shim out. Now Your shims, obviously, they used to say, the shims used to say what size they are. I have a digital caliper with me, and that's what I use to find out what my shims are, because after they've been in the motor for one cycle, you can't read how big they are. So if you need to go up or down a size, you measure what you have in your supply, and hopefully you have the right step. And the KTM 690 shims are they are in steps of 0.05. After you put your shim back in, you push the cam back in, and you don't need to put the cam follower on until you're all the way down. Well, you put the cam back in, check again with your feeler gauge. If it's correct, then you're done. So put the cam back in, push down on both rocker arms, and it slides right back in. Now we'll put the cam follower back in, and we'll put the bolt back in. You want to make sure you use Loctite on the bolt that holds the cam follower. You don't want that stuff coming down into your motor. Okay, with the valve cover back in place, you want to make sure that there's a crush gasket all the way around that's reusable, and you want to make sure that it's in place, because sometimes when you're putting it down into the valve cover down past your frame, you can knock this loose, and if it's not correct all the way around, then you're going to get a leak. I've had that happen. So these bolts are pretty funny. They're a pretty interesting bolt, and they actually will bottom out onto the head, so don't over tighten them. You can break them or strip out your head. 9 Newton meters is not a lot. Okay, so these are about finger tight right now. I'm not putting much pressure on them at all. And you can see that the gasket is now getting crushed down the way it's supposed to. And you can feel when it bottoms out, and you just have to snug them up. You don't put very much pressure on them at all. Basically, about as much pressure as you could put if you were using a screwdriver is about correct. And you for sure don't need any gasket maker around the gasket on the head of these KTMs. It just makes a mess, and it's going to be harder to clean up and get it to seal next time. Just keep it clean, and it will seal up very nicely. So there we have it. We're done. We just got to put it back together. Reverse the steps of how we took it apart. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to ask. I guess keep good maintenance on your bike, and it will last forever. Cheers.